Rick Lee alongside Carlos Arias here in Orange County, California, here at Team Oyama's, breaking down UFC 161. Carlos, this card has been plagued by injuries. The main event, Renan Barão versus Eddie Wineland, scrapped due to Renan's injury.
Yeah, and then the co-main event with Shogun Rua and Lil Na gets scrapped right alongside. So, you know, this has been happening to a lot of UFC events. They've become very good at very resilient at putting together, you know, replacement bouts. And look what we have here. We got Dan Henderson against Sugar Rashad Evans, two former champions. And then you got the red hot Roy Nelson going up against Miocic. So, you know, it looks like a really good card.
Well, let's start off with the first fight on the card, Ryan Jimmo versus Igor Pokrajac. How do you see that fight going down?
That's the one fight that I don't really care about on this entire card. But, you know, Ryan Jimmo, he's coming off a loss. Igor hasn't looked very well lately. He's maybe close to being cut. So, you know, in those kind of fights, you got your back against the wall, these guys could come out and really be thrown down.
I don't know. I really see this fight being a boring fight going 3 rounds and probably Ryan Jimmo winning the decision. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, you know, let's move on to the fights we want to talk about here.
Pat Barry versus Sean Jordan. Pat Barry, fan favorite. Everybody loves him against Sean Jordan, the former LSU college football player. How do you see this fight going down, Carlos?
Well, first of all, Pat's also a favorite in Twitter world, man. Hyper Die, you got to check him out. He's hilarious. But no, Pat has never been in a boring fight. The guy's a devastating stand-up fighter, kickboxer. He can kill you with leg kicks. He's got power in his hands, and he's got a granite chin. It's going to be really hard for Jordan to overcome that. Sean got a lot of hype. He's coming out of Jackson's MMA, but hasn't looked so great in the UFC. So I think he might be a little bit of hype, you know, and you know, we know Pat Barry what he's going to do, so I'm taking Pat Barry by knockout.
Yeah, I agree. I think Pat Barry, he's now training at Grudge Training Center in Denver, Colorado. He's definitely stepped up his MMA game. I definitely see Pat winning this fight via TKO, first or second round.
Yeah.
Moving on to Alexis Davis and Rosi Sexton. These are two girls that are new to the UFC. Rosi coming over from England,
yeah.
Manchester, England, and Alexis Davis, a Canadian herself. Both good grapplers. Who do you see winning in this fight?
Yeah, you know, I've seen Rosi Sexton fight, and same with Alexis. And Alexis has been really hot lately. She has 2 big wins in Invicta. I'm thinking Alexis stays hot and wins this one.
I'm going to have to agree with you. I think Alexis is a prospect that the UFC and a lot of fans and media have been talking about.
Yeah. One other thing, too, is when the women are on the main card, look for somebody to steal the show, and this one might be the one that steals the show, fight of the night.
Awesome. I definitely agree with you. I think Alexis Davis is going to pull off the win. Moving on to the co-main event.
Yes.
Big country Roy Nelson against Stipe Miocic. Your thoughts on this fight?
Well, I see this fight as Roy Nelson ending up rubbing his belly after another successful knockout. He's had 3 in a row, make it 4. The guy is on fire. I just think he's the heavyweight that you shouldn't underestimate ever in the UFC. And we still haven't even seen his grappling game in the UFC. And he's a fantastic black belt in jiu-jitsu. So, you know, I think he's going to take this one.
Yeah, he's a good all-around mixed martial artist, like you said, with great jiu-jitsu. I mean, Stipe is a guy with good wrestling.
And great boxing.
And great boxing. He's got power in his hands. But I don't think anyone can knock out Roy Nelson. I don't think a truck could knock out Roy Nelson. I'm going to have to go with Roy Nelson. Second round TKO. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. And the other thing, too, is, you know, Roy's never afraid to speak his mind. And last week, you know, for the 1 billionth time, he was asked, you know, why he looks so much different than, you know, the ripped, usual UFC fighter. And he said, because I don't take performance-enhancing drugs. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I don't know if the UFC like that, but hey, you know, he speaks his mind.
He's an honest guy.
Yeah.
Moving on to the main event, Rashad Evans against Dan Henderson. We actually got a chance to catch up with Dan. Here's what he had to say.
Rashad's just, you know, he's well-rounded. He's got good power, and you know, so he's dangerous on his feet. He, you know, has a lot of feints, and he's very capable of putting a lot of people on their back, taking them down. So it's just, you know, more of a chess match type fight where, you know, I need to be aggressive, but not too aggressive to get taken down.
You heard Dan break down the matchup, him and Rashad. How do you think this fight's going to play out?
Wow, man. You know, like I was saying, when fighters are, you know, when their livelihood is threatened, and we're talking about Rashad Evans, one of the top fighters in the UFC, back-to-back losses. What happens if he has a 3rd straight loss? So I think we're going to see the best Rashad Evans, you know, that we've seen in a long time. he needs a win. He definitely needs a win.
Both of these guys are coming off losses. I don't know how many more fights Dan Henderson has. I read something earlier that maybe 5 or 6, but I know the guy wants the belt. He's had the belt in every other organization he's really fought in, so this is a must-win fight for both guys. But if I had to bet on this fight, I'm going to have to go with Rashad Evans. I think he's going to grind out a decision. I think, you know, I'm a Dan Henderson fan, but I think Rashad is going to pull off this one.
Man, you know what? As much as that makes sense, I can't go against Dan Henderson. I think, you know, Rashad has those amazing takedowns. He's going to have to walk through at least one of those right hands by Dan Henderson. We've seen Dan put away a lot of people with that right hand, and plus he's a great wrestler in his own right.
Make sure to watch UFC 161 this Saturday on pay-per-view. Carlos, thanks for joining me.
Right on.
Appreciate it. See you guys next time.